How many of you had a meal made from a can of tuna this past week? A tuna sandwich, maybe? Now, how many of you know exactly where that tuna was caught from? Would it matter to you if it wasn't? The EU's law enforcement agency, Europol, recently stated that of all food sectors, the seafood sector is the most vulnerable to counterfeit globally. Substitution and mislabeling of fish are common. A recent study in North America found that about 20% of the fish products surveyed were mislabeled. It wasn't the fish that it was being advertised as. Now, our Pacific Ocean is home to the healthiest tuna stocks in the world. In fact, about 60% of the world's tuna supply comes from the Pacific. How much of that is being substituted or mislabeled? 2 years ago, I started Traceable Solutions with my husband Ken from the comfort of our home. We were just settling back into Suva. I had moved here from Samoa, and he had just moved back home from the Solomon Islands. Now, I'd like to share a little bit about our story. Before moving to Fiji, I worked as a Fisheries Compliance officer for the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries back home in Samoa. I studied marine science and was keen on pursuing a career in fisheries management. My husband, Ken, on the other hand, is an IT professional. And we met in the Solomon Islands, where at that time he was working for a regional fisheries agency. So long story short, when we found out that we were going to become parents, we knew we had to make big decisions for our future together as a family. So leaving loved ones and the security of a regular paycheck behind in Samoa, I made the move to Fiji. A few months later, Ken too left his job to join us here. Moving here, I thought I would settle in, find a job working in fisheries, and continue working towards the goals that I had. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Finding employment was extremely difficult and frustrating. I faced many obstacles being a foreigner, and was starting to feel a bit hopeless and maybe slightly depressed about my whole unemployment situation. As much as I loved being a stay-at-home mom, looking after our son Elias, I didn't want to limit myself to doing just that. So Ken and I would always talk about our experiences in fisheries. And one day, he shared with me an interesting outcome from a workshop that he had attended. It was a fisheries workshop on traceability and market access. The outcome from this workshop was pretty much, if the EU auditors were to visit Fiji the next week after this workshop so that they can conduct an audit about our seafood export processes to the EU, we'd simply fail that audit, and simply because the industry could not meet the high standards for traceability set by the EU. So we saw an opportunity here that nobody else was working in, the need for traceability technology. From our national and regional fisheries experience, we knew that this type of innovation wouldn't come from the existing organizations. No. What was needed to effect change was an entrepreneurial mindset. So, our research into traceability eventually birthed TraSeable Solutions, our big idea worth sharing. We combined our experiences and our skills in fisheries to work on something we thought was meaningful. On a more personal level, we wanted the flexibility as a young family to spend as much family time as we could together. We also wanted the flexibility to be able to dictate. We also wanted to be able to dictate how, when, and where we work from, and more importantly, what we worked on. And entrepreneurship provided us that. So with as little as 5,000 Fiji dollars from our savings, we took the risk, got our business registered, and pretty much bootstrapped Traceable Solutions from October 2017 up to this date, avoiding any outside investment or loans. It was a big risk, and still is. We had no business experience whatsoever. And we sought advice from people that we trusted about our business idea. What we did have was a deep industry knowledge and many contacts in fisheries. So we also had a good idea of the challenges in the seafood in the industry, which I'd like to focus on 3 of those today. They are part of the reason why Traceable Solutions exists. First of all, to export seafood products from Fiji, we need to meet certain requirements of the importing countries. These requirements are around the origin of the product and even official guarantees about how that product was handled and processed. Now, these requirements are becoming stricter. The EU has had strict requirements for many years, and there are indications that other large market states are also considering the same. The second one is illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing, or IUU fishing, in the Pacific tuna industry is estimated at $616 million annually. That is $616 million worth of our resources stolen from the Pacific, which equates to about billions of dollars if you consider the value of processed tuna products. And finally, a recent scientific report suggests that climate change will impact Pacific tuna fishery too. A warmer Pacific Ocean will see tuna stocks move towards the cooler waters of the Eastern Pacific. Tuna fishing fleets will follow the tuna out of the exclusive economic zones of these Pacific Island countries, leading to revenue losses for these economies. Now, these are complex problems that require coordinated solutions at multiple levels. Traceability technology is just one of them. So what is traceability? Very simply, traceability is being able to track the origin of all parts of a product and tracking that product through the supply chain. Now, if you think of a can of tuna, then traceability is being able to track the origin of that tuna going into the can all the way back to where that tuna was caught from. Traceability is also tracking where that can and all the other packaging material was sourced from. Traceability is also tracking that can of tuna from the factory where it was produced to your supermarket shelves. Traceability is essential for food safety. Now, if you think of all the major foodborne illnesses, the Chinese milk scandal, the numerous E. coli, listeria, and salmonella outbreaks from contaminated food, traceability helps to identify the source of the contamination and helps in product recalls to keep consumers like us safe. If you start tracking information about a seafood product, you can leverage that information to give consumers and anybody along the value chain a story about the product. And this is what we do at Traceable Solutions. Every individual fish caught is tagged with a unique QR code that, as it travels along the value chain, information is entered at each key stage. So, how does having a digital traceability system help to address strict market access, illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing, and the potential impact of climate change on our Pacific fisheries? Imagine you own a fishing company. You have 3 fishing boats that go fishing for up to 3 weeks. You're an ethical operator who believes that a sustainable and healthy fishery is good for everyone, but you're under pressure. You need to make a profit. Before your boats even catch a single fish, you're incurring costs for things like your crew's wages, supplies, maintenance, even port fees. Now, how do you maximize the value of the fish that you catch? To do this, you need to be able to access markets where your fish can fetch a higher price. These markets often have strict requirements on where the fish comes from and requires traceability. You also want to prove that you're an ethical operator and that your fishing operations are transparent. Prove this to the authorities. Prove this to your customers. And finally, to the consumers who consume the fish that you catch. With a digital traceability system, you can do this. Now, as a fishing operator, you're also required to record all your catch data and keep records of your boat's operations. So things like your engine logs, your safety logs, and even temperature logs, all on paper. Now, because you want to be an ethical operator and that you want to show that you're compliant with all the rules, you actually, well, you have no choice, but you have to do this and record all this data. Now, data on paper is great, but it has its problems. It can get lost, it can be damaged, or even manipulated. Now, wouldn't it be great if you could enter all that information electronically once to satisfy all the regulatory requirements while at the same time making that data available to you easily for your own analytical purposes? A good digital traceability system helps make compliance easy so you can continue to carry out your fishing operations without having your license taken away. To add on even more pressure, you're faced with a changing climate. You have lower catches than you used to for the same effort that you put in. Now, the experts say you need to value add your catch in order for you to maximize the return on what you actually catch. Now, to maximize the value of your fish, the experts say to value add the product and target high value markets where your fish consumers will be able to pay a premium for it. Now, these markets require strict traceability, and for this, again, you will need a digital traceability system. Now, we took this a step further and built a blockchain-enabled digital traceability system, a first in the world for the longline fishery, and built entirely by Pacific Islanders. Okay, now you must be thinking, what is this blockchain thing? Blockchain technology, very simply, is a shared digital record of transactions. Transactions record things going in and things coming out, like a bank account, for example. Now imagine that this digital record of transactions is stored on thousands of computers around the world. And whenever you make a change to one of these records, this change is recorded on all the other thousands of copies. So whatever transaction you make to one copy of the record, the same will apply to everything else. So what blockchain does, it creates a tamper-proof record that something existed. When you apply this to fish, blockchain creates a tamper-proof record that your fish, for every single fish that was caught, and what happened to it as it moved through the supply chain. Blockchain technology improves transparency, which decreases the chances of seafood fraud. At Traceable this year, we've tracked over 40,000 individual fish from where they were caught to where they ended up. We launched our product in February, and since then have secured our first local clients, and very recently, our first international clients in Australia. You know, we believe that as Pacific Islanders, we have the keys to the solutions of our problems. Some outsiders may think otherwise, but we all know that there is a Pacific way to doing things. It's great to have an innovative idea that you think there is a demand for in the market, but it's an entirely different proposition to be able to build a successful business around that idea. For first-time entrepreneurs, it certainly hasn't been easy for us. We learned the hard way by doing. If you had asked me several years ago what I'd be doing today, it certainly wouldn't have been running my own business. Learning to be an entrepreneur, I've had to overcome many personal fears to help grow our business. The fear of public speaking, for one. I've always hated it and tried to avoid it as much as I could, but here I am today. And I know my parents watching in from Samoa must be so proud. There's also the uneasiness of being a young woman meeting much older and more experienced business people and feeling like they aren't taking me seriously. Mostly men. Sometimes women too. There's also the challenge of being a new mom and an entrepreneur at the same time, trying to balance work and family. Trying to work from home while our 2-year-old son, Elias, sometimes my husband, wants attention. For budding entrepreneurs, women especially, find something meaningful and spend your time working on it and build a business around it. When you're gray and old and looking back on your life's work, what would you be most proud of? Be patient. Yes, it's been 2 years. We haven't had much patience. And don't be afraid to do things differently. Invest in your business by investing in yourself. If I can start a unique tech business without a tech background and in a male-dominated sector like the seafood industry, you can do it too. In the near future, requirements for end-to-end traceability and transparency in food supply chains will only get more rigid and heavily regulated for our safety. Digital traceability systems will be the norm in the future. And that is why at Traceable Solutions, we believe in improving value through trust and technology and are building the digital tools that fisher folks and farmers will be using tomorrow. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to leave you all with a very simple challenge. The next time you pick out a can of tuna or any seafood product from your local supermarket, ask yourself, is this really what it says it is? Who caught it and where? Was it legally caught? Is it traceable? Faftai lava and thank you.